The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host.
Mark once again goes all honky-tonk on Damn You Hollywood.
Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend, our dear leader, is standing in the rain with his head hung low. He couldn't get a ticket. It was a sold-out show. Heard the roar of the crowd. You could picture the scene. Put his ear to the wall like a distant scream. He heard one guitar just blew him away. He saw the stars in his eyes, and the very next day, bought a beat-up six-string in a second-hand store. Didn't know how to play it, but he knew for sure that one guitar.
Break it over your head like Jeff Jarrett.
That one guitar felt good in his hands. Didn't take long to understand. Just one guitar slung way down low was a one-way ticket. Only one way to go. So he started rocking on Damn You Hollywood. He ain't never gonna stop.
We're gonna push that theory real hard over the next 12 months.
But Robert Winfree's gonna keep on rocking. Someday Mark Radulich is gonna make it to the top.
Yeah,
Because Robert Winfree's a jukebox hero. He's got stars in his eyes. Jukebox hero. Ladies and gentlemen, the jukebox hero of Damn You Hollywood, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Yeah, we're not on a time crunch or anything. Let's just let Mark go off.
I have no table setting. We're going to get right into these movies for a brief introduction. But what would Damn You Hollywood be if I didn't rock you into the podcast?
Slightly more efficient?
Slightly. So we don't have movies from last Friday to talk about tonight. So this was an open week. And as I've been saying all year, because I am social, I don't have time to do triple features like I used to. So when we have an open week, I try to fit one in. And that was what this was going to be. It was Boston Strangler, Tetris, and then Bruiser. And then, hang on. I watched.
Let me tell the story because
Okay.
Because I am a good boy.
Oh, okay.
Because I like to do my homework ahead of time.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I watched these two movies, knowing that
Boston Strangler and Tetris.
Yes. And then because it was late, I was figured, okay, I'll get around to Bruiser. You know, I had plenty of time. I was going to get around to Bruiser in a couple of days. I might have watched this before Bruiser came out technically, because that's the most recent release. The other two are a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said briefly in the chat, as I want to do, after I see something I know we're going to review, I give Mark a preview so he's not blindsided by my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so I gave him my brief thoughts, and he hadn't seen either movie. And I was kind of left it at that. And then a couple of days later, might have been about a week later, Mark comes back and says, well, Tetris was meh, but Boston Strangler is my new favorite thing ever. It deserves all the Oscars.
Not quite what I said. But
I cried like a bitch. And I said, I thought...
Wait. Judge Radulich is going to allow your exaggeration. One, Spock, you very rarely exaggerate. Two, considering this is my gag you're now stealing, I suppose turnabout is fair play. It is my turn to be bent over the fainting chair. Please continue.
So Mark goes, I cried, I cheered,
I
I
laughed,
threw
I
my
cried, I
pants at the
vomited.
screen. This was the cinematic experience of my lifetime. I can't wait to share it with my wife and children. And I said, you are like you're joking. Like you're ribbing me, right? Like this is a gag. And he would, nope, completely serious, because that's how I know. I have to ask.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, this was completely serious. And I said, how?
All right. And then Robert,
Why?
the next 12 hours, proceeded to bang his shoe and scream and yell in the chat, to the point where Andrew Graham and I were in another chat lamenting to each other. Somehow we pressed the button on Robert Winfree's soul, and just wound him up. And I was like, all right, we're gonna have to cut one of these movies, because you and I have to talk about Boston Strangler a little more than I had anticipated.
So,
Give it more than the 20 minutes that we usually carve out for a triple feature.
So the long and the short of that was, I hadn't seen Bruiser yet. Mark hadn't seen Bruiser yet, and we kind of said, all right, leave that one by the wayside.
Okay.
Tetris will take 5 minutes. We can talk Boston Strangler, and Mark can make sure he leaves on time for his social engagement or whatever other euphemism he chooses to spout.
I'm social.
Blink twice, need help.
Tetris is a 2023 biographical thriller film directed by. Were you thrilled?
So much thrilled.
Okay. I have a studio audience member tonight, so I was asking her. She saw it with me, and I was asking her if she felt the thrill of Tetris. Did you feel the thrill of Tetris in your cockles?
Yes.
Terrific. Directed by John S. Baird, written by Noah Pink, and starring Taron Egerton, Nikita Efremov, Sophia Lebedeva, Anthony Boyle, Toby Jones. Yes, that Toby Jones from Captain America. And Roger Allam. It is based on the true events around the race to license and patent the video game Tetris in the late 1980s during the Cold War. Tetris premiered on South by Southwest Film Festival on March 15, 2023, and was released on March 31st, 2023 by Apple TV. You may have heard of John S. Baird. He is responsible for... I
appreciate how you phrased that.
He wrote, direct, and produced Filth. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds fantastic. He also directed Stan and Ollie, which I actually saw in the theaters. I need to rewatch that. That was fantastic. He's got some television credits to his name. He did an episode of Vinyl. I'm dying up here. So I know his stuff.
Yes, you are.
So I am familiar with some of his stuff. I've watched a thing or two. So no full. I guess this is Damn You Hollywood, not triple feature. So Robert, like really, really quickly, because I don't want to waste a lot of time on the plot synopsis.
There's barely a plot here.
Yeah, like 10 words or less.
So Taron Egerton plays Hank Rogers, who discovers Tetris at a video game convention. And this is not like a fan convention. This is where distributors get together and they hear pitches.
It's CES. It's the consumer. It's where it's the same convention that goes on the same time as like the porn convention. So it's a bunch of nerds and a bunch of porn actresses all getting together at the same time. Yes. See, you didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. They whatever
forgive the Mormon boy for not being up on the porn tropes.
Oh yeah. Whenever consumer electronics, the Consumer Electronics Convention is in Vegas, so is the porn convention. It's great.
I imagine there's a lot of dubious legality.
Whatever you're thinking there's a lot of, there is a lot of.
I am sure.
But yeah, he's at the Consumer Electronics Convention where they see Tetris, and then it's like, oh, this is a game, because everything is because this is the Soviet Union at the time.
Well,
everything is owned by the Soviet Union.
So we get the backstory of Tetris, which was a very simple program developed by, as Mark mentioned, a programmer who worked for the state-run Electronics Corporation in the Soviet Union, and he distributed it via 3.25 inch floppy disk. I still have some of those. I actually have, no joke, I should have brought it, but I own a
the last thing I need on these podcasts is
I know, I own a floppy disk copy of Tetris.
Cool.
So he finds Tetris, so he starts distributing it. It gets out of the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union sucks, and different companies gain the rights to distribute it, allegedly, because Russia. because the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So Taron Egerton wants to get the rights to the video games and the arcade systems for this for Japan, because he lives there with his wife and children, who are
And
the
he's doing this for Nintendo. Like he owns his own company, but he is contracted.
He wants
to
to be
Nintendo.
he wants to become a subcontractor for Nintendo America. And he sort of gets there, and they start trying to figure out who owns the rights to what, and there's a fat billionaire who owns part of the distribution rights. And then around the same time, the Game Boy is developed. And this is important because no one understands what handheld games are, so there are no rules for handheld game rights. So now whoever can get this can have the golden goose, because that's the way it is. And then
the intention is, if you bought a Game Boy when it first came out, you know that it came with Tetris. So essentially, what they're asking for is the right to make a handheld game cartridge of Tetris, which they are then going to package with the Game Boy. And this is an important plot point, because in deciding in the race to climb the ladder and grab the title, that being handheld game rights for Tetris, the answer is, well, how much is this thing worth if we just get a piece of the unit sold versus how much will we get if we sell it outright? Because there's one offer that's made by one group where it's just like, here's a flat fee. So this is kind of like, and I keep referencing this now, this is like, we should have just done a review of this. Maybe we will when it comes on Prime. It's kind of the Air Jordan shoe deal.
Oh, I watched Air the other night. I was not impressed.
Fair enough. But the point of it is, because I said I referenced this on a different podcast thing where we were talking about, I don't know, whatever one Alexis was on last. And I said, they were going to give Jordan a flat fee. And it's like, no, he wants a piece of every shoe. And there was a debate over whether or not that would bankrupt the shoe industry or not.
Hang on. Having now seen the movie, that's not how that conversation went.
Ben Affleck was like...
I literally watched this last night. Matt Damon goes to Ben Affleck and says, we didn't get Jordan. I'm sorry. He wants a piece of every shoe sold. And I know we're not going to do that. And Ben Affleck goes, screw it. Give it to him.
Okay, but he decides to take a chance that this may or may not bankrupt the shoe industry.
There's a 2-minute sequence later where he's laying on a couch and he talks with Damon and he goes, yeah, well, screw it. If we go down in flames, at least we had fun.
Okay, so I don't know why you're arguing with me about this, but...
It's not an actual narrative point for the story. It's tacked on at the very end. It's not actually discussed.
It's debatable. In any case, the point being that there's one group that's offering a flat fee and another one that says you get a piece of every unit we sell, and we plan to sell 20 million of these, and it turns out they sold over 1 billion.
Well, and to say nothing of the fact that the group making the flat offer is headed by this billionaire who's friends with Gorbachev, who is bribing the corrupt USSR official into saying, take our deal, because his company desperately needs the rights to Tetris to stay afloat because he's engaged in some embezzling schemes.
And again, I don't want to. I want to get through the plot synopsis, but we have to talk about this one thing where they're like, because the story of the licensing of Tetris for handheld game rights is really the story of the fall of communism, and
it did happen at the same time.
Well, and it's illustrated by this one point that the billionaire makes. He was like, You're communists. You don't want money. You want an exchange of information. We're giving you the license to the Encyclopedia Britannica in the Soviet Union, and for that we get your Tetris IP. That's an even exchange. You don't need money. You're communists. And there's a group going,
the corrupt like secret service member, like the secret police member goes, yeah, we know this is falling apart. I want money.
Right. Well, I mean, more to the point, you have the bigger, there's a discussion of the bigger population of the Soviet Union, wanting to join the free world and join the, there's a lot of lamentation of communism not working out for the average Soviet citizen, and they want their shot at freedom. And that's what Tetris represents. Tetris represents a throwing off of the communist yoke and accepting capitalism and democracy and joining the 20th century. And there's there's people in Russia that don't want that, and there are people that do, and the flashpoint is Tetris. And that's kind of the movie.
Well, that and how dare Taron Egerton work hard for his family.
We'll get to that. That's the thing I have to yell about too. But
because it's
all right.
terrible. So
Is there any-
anyway, the long and
Yeah.
the short of that is, as everyone's looking into this, they realize, oh, everything we've been doing to print this game and to manufacture and distribute it is technically illegal because our deal was not actually with the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
So they could, the international law in this case is a little bit iffy, but again, in theory, we're in violation of the law. So wait, this means no one actually owns the rights to anything, not just handheld. We can get everything. And these two groups negotiate. There's technically three of them. They negotiate with the Soviet Union. There's the power struggle within the Soviet Union because there's the corrupt actuary who just wants more money for himself so he can flee once the state crumbles. There's the sort of true believer who runs the whatever the state-run electronic software company is, who's like, this is the best deal for the Soviet Union if we get a percentage of everything sold, because it is. If you can ever get that, if you can ever get royalties like that, take them. They're good. And then there's a little bit about, well, what do we do with the developer? He is a traitor to the communist people. He and his family just want to get out. What do we do? And it's a thing. And it's ultimately Hank Rogers is able to secure the rights for Nintendo. Tetris, it becomes one of the best-selling video games of all time. There are still Tetris games being made. It's still one of the best games ever.
Yep, we were playing at the Lowry Parkade last Saturday night.
And the developer and his family get out of the Soviet Union. He and Hank become good friends. Hank makes up with his family and becomes fabulously wealthy.
So I didn't hate this movie. I enjoyed watching.
It's not worth hating.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just not good.
I was entertained by it. I mean, I just watched Blackberry today as well, and I'm finding that like I like a good business based on a true story movie. I like to see like the rise and fall of things. I mean, I don't know how close to real this whole story about Tetris is, but
yeah,
I'll tell you what, if you're watching
the basic outline is more or less accurate, but they add a lot of crap.
Well, I was gonna say, like, if you're watching it with somebody who's not really interested in the finer points of trade law, this gets a little in the weeds. I was like riveted, like they're talking about licensing and, only, licensed to distribute this way, but not that way, and the finer points of it. And like they're discussing like contract law, and it's like a lot of that, but also Taron Egerton running, and
he does a lot of awkward running.
Yeah, and then there's
there's a lot of like undue. I'm not a fan of the Soviet Union, to the shock of no one. But they make them a much more like far-reaching menace. Like Soviet agents go menace his wife at their place of business in Japan.
Yeah, well, not only that, but like in a desire to, you can't just make this like a dry recitation of the events of Tetris. You have to have action beats, and so like there's
car chase.
There's a car chase. There's Taron Egerton gets beat up by the KGB. There's a couple of action beats here and there.
There's a misdirect about which plane we're all getting on.
Yeah, and it's so funny because like Taron Egerton, who we reviewed his Robin Hood movie from a few years ago.
Yeah, and I still have not forgiven him.
And I think he was in something else where he was in an action thing. It's like
he's the lead in The Kingsman.
Oh, that's right. He's leading The Kingsman. And so see him here, and like it's so funny because you could desperately see him wanting to do more action and realizing Tetris is a little on the dry side, which is fine. Like I don't need every movie to be The Kingsman, but by the same token, don't take your dry business movie and try to make it The Kingsman either. That's dumb.
Yeah.
And so like it would be like somebody wanting to remake Glengarry Glen Ross and like let's just throw random car chases and and gunplay in there. Like no. This movie doesn't need that.
Stop. Don't give Hollywood ideas. Jar Jar Abrams just pinged.
Wall Street, but Fast and the Furious. Ugh.
Someone is working on that.
Someone is writing the script right now. It's like, what if he says, why must you wreck this company? Because it's wreckable, but he says it in a speeding car.
He says because it's wreckable, and then he pushes a button and an orbital satellite launches a laser. We make a dystopian future where failed companies are just nuked from orbit.
So I don't know how much more you want to discuss with this, but overall, like it's one of those where it's on. If you have Apple Plus, if you and you have a night, where you're wanting to watch a movie and you're interested in, you're semi interested in the history of Tetris. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's one I would recommend, but it's one of those where I don't see where this movie has a lot of mass appeal.
Here's my gripes with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have the story for 2 hours.
Yeah, this was a long movie.
It doesn't have the story for it, and it's very, very obvious that it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem. We also, it tries to do a bunch of stuff when it really should have stayed a bit simpler.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the fall of communism.
So that's the thing. Like the movie works for me on like a thematic level. I like what it's talking about. It's just it's not a lot of it's too much time for too little movie. But it's commentary on the fall of communism. It's commentary.
Sort of.
It's commentary on capitalism versus communism. It's commentary on what it's like to live in a totalitarian state.
And then there's billionaires are bad being thrown in there, and nepotism's bad being thrown in there, and the family drama with him and his wife and their kids comes out of left field.
Let's talk about that, because both you and I, if we don't agree on anything else on the rest of this podcast, we both saw that one scene. It was like, come the fuck on. So, and I have been there where like you're the provider for your family. You're working hard for your family. You're going out, you're doing a job, or in this particular case, this guy's got a company that's on the brink of bankruptcy. And like
his house is on the line.
Yeah, and this is his last big swing before he loses everything, including his house. And so it's not like he was in the Soviet Union getting drunk in bars and going to strip clubs. He got held over because the Soviets that he's dealing with are moving at a snail's pace. And so he misses his daughter's concert. And instead of coming home and being like, that's okay, we know you were doing it for the greater good, they're like, why did you leave your busy business that, trying to save your family to not be home with your family and see your daughter's concert? And like, he's made to be the bad guy. And it's like, can we not do this anymore, Hollywood?
So utterly. Here's the other thing about it. If you want to tell the story about the work-obsessed father and the stress that can put on a relationship and a marriage and a family, okay, I'm not opposed to those stories. One, they're overdone. Two, it has no place in this story, and it comes out of left field at the last minute because we need to drag this out.
That's the thing. Like, this was one where I think they're like, oh, the story of Tetris is a really fun idea. And then I think they started plotting it out, and they were like, well, we want to get to over 2 hours. We don't have enough story for that. So like, they're just creating inflated drama out of whole cloth. That was my biggest problem with that. I was like, yeah, this whole sequence could have been cut. Not to mention that the story you're telling, the lesson being learned here is you as a man should not try to support your family at all costs. Like, if your family's going down in flames, just fucking go with it. Like, let it happen, because clearly, if you get up and go to work, that's way too much for your family. It's ridiculous.
It really is.
Like, I'm a little sensitive to it. I fucking hate it because I've kind of gotten that myself in my life, where it's just like, you work so much. You're right. Mortgages are high. Bills are a lot. I have to.
Do you like driving?
Hey, you know that stuff we put in cars called gas? It's expensive.
The food? The food's kind of important. Like,
well, it's so funny because I see this shit on. It's not even just like in my life. I see this shit on TikTok too.
It's every This is a thing that it's a pernicious idea that has invaded popular culture and popular society to a ridiculous degree, especially when you consider the inverse. Which remember when
like men going to work was like an lauded thing, and like that's how you proved your worth in society. Now, if you're like a man that goes to work, you're like hurting your family somehow. It's like you're an asshole.
Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to work when everyone else is asleep, and then be present in there when everyone else is awake.
Sure.
And who cares if you sleep or if you go crazy?
Right.
Yeah. We've lost this as a society. I'm not going to get on a soapbox here or anything, but
no.
And again, it especially kills me when you look at the inverse, which we're going to talk about with Boston Strangler, where the career woman is lauded as a moral good.
Right.
despite the negative consequences.
Yeah. If her family falls apart because she's out there working because she's a busy businesswoman who, then it's the guy's fault for not doing his share.
How dare the husband not be supportive?
Yeah. All right. Do we want to do the critical review? Are we done with this?
Yeah, let's go fast through this for Tetris.
All right. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the much ballyhooed critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Well, both the critics and the audience thought it was good. It was okay. It was fine.
I mean, look, I got my issues with this movie. Pass, fail, it's a pass.
Yeah, it is not incompetent. The chat GPT that works for Rotten Tomatoes says, well, it's nowhere near as addictive or as fast-paced as the game.
Barred.
Tetris offers a fun, fizzy account of the story behind an 8-bit classic.
Yeah.
It's totally written by AI, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The audience says, even if it plays fast and loose with a true story behind the game, Tetris is tons of fun, and Taron Egerton has never been better.
That's not true. Well, I'd have to go back through his filmography in detail, and I just don't care to.
All right. Maintenance in progress. Of course it is. There we go.
We picked a good time for this.
Let's see here. Oh, the former ex-Mrs. Robert Winfree, Carla Renata of the Curvy Film Critic.
All right.
Drama, intrigue, politics, and financial greed. These are words. Makes Tetris a memorable film from start to finish.
It's not.
Who know a video game would have caused such global tension?
Okay. First of all, you're a professional. Spell check your work. You mean who knew? Not who know.
Symphony Barnes of Cultured Vultures. With all the many biopics these days, Tetris will likely become another forgotten one amongst them thanks to its unfocused and exhaustive narrative.
This isn't exhaustive. If you don't have the patience... Hang on. It's unfocused, sure. It's overlong, but that doesn't make it exhaustive. If you don't have the patience for this movie, I question how much you watch film.
Tiffany Kelly of the Daily Dot. The film is strongest when it focuses on the friendship at the heart of the story.
You know, there is some truth to that. Like the actual relationship and friendship between Hank and the Soviet developer whose name escapes me, I think it was Alexei. That's actually a really good story, and it's really heartwarming, and those two have good on-screen chemistry, and it's sadly shortchanged.
Rohan Nahar of the Indian Express. Toot toot. Like a gamer who resorts to button mashing after initially resolving to take the elegant approach. Tetris
okay, hang on. I'm actually going to allow that one. That's pretty good.
Tetris disintegrates into a mess of its own making after a deliriously entertaining first half. I would not call it deliriously entertaining.
Yeah, you're exaggerating that, but he's also not wrong about the structure in general. So, you know what? Fair play. And calling out button mashers. Good time.
All right. Greg Quick, CWIK. I refuse to believe that's his last name. In Review Online, that sense of apathy that plagues the film's conception is what will ultimately register most with viewers. There's simply nothing to be excited about here.
It's a bit much.
Yeah. I love reading Stephanie's stuff. Stephanie, you're one of our friends, and I'm going to make you sorry that I said that. Yeah. Stephanie Zacharik of Time Magazine, top critic. She gets paid for this. In movie terms, it all works, and Egerton and Efremov are wonderful.
In movie terms, it doesn't all work. And wonderful is a very flowery adjective to throw at adequate performances.
Here's our friend.
Oh, our friends.
Our friend. Kevin Carr of Fat Guy at the Movies. An excellent mix of 8-bit nostalgia, 80s pop culture, and reality, with a healthy dose of Hollywood liberties. This man has never read a history book.
I would venture to guess that's true.
John Anderson of the Wall Street Journal, top critic. It's the definition of guilty pleasure.
No, it's not. How in the Wall Street Journal out here pretending that irregardless is a word with that kind of nonsense? Like
Wall Street Journal, former newspaper. Ha ha! Your medium is dying.
We should just nuke it already. Just be done with this.
All right, last one, and then we're gonna No, I have one more after this, but last
Okay.
two, and then we're done. Julian Roman of MovieWeb. Tetris succeeds at showing communism's iron grip of oppression, brutal tactics, and rampant corruption. The cloak and dagger plotting works in the first two acts before taking a hyperbolic turn.
Not terribly incorrect, but and for the record, like when this movie tries to be accurate to how the Soviet Union functioned, it's much better. And you actually do get the sense of oppression. By the end, it's a cartoon. Like it's Tom and Jerry at the end.
Michael Medved of the Michael Medved Show. We hates you, Michael
Well,
Medved.
Mark
We hates you. He was mean to me, and you have to hate him too. That's how this works.
Hang on. I am in no way, shape, form, or fashion now or ever obligated to feel the same way you do about anyone or anything.
Yes, you do. We are in a relationship, and you have to like and hate the same things I do. Isn't that right?
We are not, and
Okay. The Peanut Gallery agrees. We're moving on now.
The Peanut Gallery can suck it. I don't care.
He says you can suck it. Peanut Gallery. The Peanut Gallery says you wish. Anyway, Michael Medved of the Michael Medved Show.
I don't need those diseases, thanks.
Almost as captivating as the game, Edgerton plays such an obsessed, audacious protagonist that you stick with him through all the sometimes hard to follow twists and turns. Aw, was this too much movie for you, Michael Medved?
How in the world was this hard to follow?
I mean, I don't know. Michael Medved maybe need to stick to simpler movies like fucking Twilight.
Don't remind me those exist. You know the reboot's coming. You know it's coming.
So Derpy was in and out, but while he was here, I guess he listened long enough because he left 2 comments. He was like, "Was Tetris any good?" And then he said, "By that assumption, it seems mid."
It is. Look. This is mid passing. This is the definition of like a C minus.
Yeah, like I said, like it's one of those where if you're one of those couples that doesn't get to go out a lot and you're looking for stuff to watch on a Saturday night, Tetris is just fine. All right, so let's move on to a sissy slap fight that we're gonna have to have called Boston Strangler.
Mark, hang on. Have you read the tweet I made about this when you posted the show?
No.
Okay, let me tell everyone how this is gonna go before Mark reads the wiki. Like Mark's gonna read the wiki, then I'm gonna do the plot synopsis, and then here's how this is gonna go. Mark, I loved it. I cried. It moved me on a spiritual level. Me. Here's my laundry list of problems. Mark. But my emotions. Me. Your emotions are valid. Here's my list of problems. Mark. Fine. Your list of problems are valid. You're a robot. We shake hands. We move on. That's the show.
All right, here we go.
Look, I mean, that's just how we do things here.
I have some craft complaints too, you jerk. All right, so
I'm the broad strokes.
Boston Strangler is a 2023 American historical crime drama.
Giant air quotes around that and put giant air quotes around drama.
A film written and directed by Matt Ruskin, who has no hyperlink. It is based on the true story of the Boston Strangler, who in the 1960s Boston killed 13 women. The film stars Keira Knightley as Loretta McLaughlin, the reporter who broke the news for the Boston Record American, with Carrie Coon, Alessandro Nivola, Chris Cooper, David Dastmalchian, and Morgan Spector. Boston Strangler was released in the United States on March 17th, 2023 by Hulu. All right, give me the quick and dirty.
So the Boston Strangler was in real life, this was a series of murders, which was thought to be at the time the work of a serial killer, even though serial killer wasn't actually in the common vernacular at this point in time. I believe we're still a couple of years away from the actual science, to the extent you want to call it science, that would become profiling and behavioral analysis. Which is one of my gripes with this movie, actually. They make a lot of assumptions and use a lot of lingo that would not be accurate. But series of murders that a couple of reporters pick up on. They try to investigate. The Boston City Police Department and the Boston State Police Department don't get along, and there's cooperative issues, and nobody likes the women. Can't imagine why.
I mean, why would anyone like women, especially in the 60s?
And
to be home making sandwiches.
So there's a lot of friction and pushback, and a lot of Look, when the frying pan comes in from off screen and hits you in the head, I'm going to laugh. I just want
It
you
won't
to
be a
know.
frying pan. It'll be her phone. But let's move on.
And this, in theory, takes place over years, and the actual case took a lot longer and covered a lot of other states. But the long and the short of it is, Keira Knightley's character just keeps investigating because she's not satisfied with the job that the police are doing. Don't you understand? Not satisfied. So she keeps digging and she keeps looking, and this goes on for years and years and years. And finally, somebody confesses. And she goes, "This doesn't make sense. It can't have been him for all these reasons." And then, well, it was him, and we all want to put this behind us. We don't want to talk about the Boston Strangler anymore. The people, Mark, the people are in an uproar. Public safety is at risk. We can't have riots and lack of, the fear, Mark, the fear that grips Boston. So they want to put it behind. We've got our monster. He's in jail. He's going to be executed. We're moving on. And then a couple of other people die in other states, and she goes, well, maybe the Boston Strangler is still out there, and now he's the American Strangler because he's in Michigan and Iowa and
like Howard Dean, he's gonna go to Iowa, and he's gonna go to North Carolina, he's gonna go to Florida.
Wow.
Yeah!
real timely reference there.
You know, it's so funny. I will often forget his name, and so I'll make that reference and not remember it's Howard Dean.
Yeah,
That was the first time I got both parts of that joke right.
that's fair. But he's going to go on a political campaign running for office. And along the way, just murdering random women. So she tries to organize an interview with the confessed killer. And he says, yeah, all right, because I got screwed on this deal by my lawyer. You see, I was under the impression I could write a book and get paid, but there's actually laws against that. And then he is immediately shanked in prison, just violently stabbed to death like you do. And she goes, there must be a conspiracy. So she gets a hold of his confession tape where he's basically walked through his confession by the questioning officer. And she goes, don't you see? Conspiracy. It was him and it was these three other guys. And this wasn't the work of one killer. It was all of them. And it was the Masons. And then the Illuminati showed up. And I'm pretty sure the president's involved. And I'm referencing a lot of other movies that do the same stupid thing. And she's eventually told, please stop. He's dead. The other two are in jail for the next 80 years. What are you doing? And she goes, but the truth matters. And they go, but you can't even prove this is the truth. Like 80% of this is your wild speculation. She goes, fine, I'll go back to work. And by the time she does, her husband is left with the children because she's become a crazy person. And she and her investigative partner go on to become celebrated journalists. And there's a giant factual error at the end of this where one of the alleged killers is said to still be alive in prison when the movie's released, when in fact he died in 2018.
So here
and
I
this
have
movie, this slow-paced David Fincher wannabe moved my good friend Mark Radulich.
Oh, all right. Hang on. Let me deal with something real quick. The wiki says there's a whole couple of paragraphs here about some of the historical inaccuracies.
The historical inaccuracies section is plot synopsis.
But other major details changed for the film include the character of Detective Connolly as a composite of multiple real detectives who worked on the case.
That's pretty standard for these kinds of movies.
Yeah, the film shows Loretta and Jean meeting for the first time shortly before working together on stories in 1962. In real life, they worked together as early as April 1952.
So
okay?
We just skipped a whole decade of these two's history.
Yeah. In the film, DeSalvo calls Loretta and tells her to come to visiting hours the next day to hear his side of the story. However, he is killed by prisoners that night. In real life, DeSalvo called psychiatrist Dr. Amos Roby just prior to his death. Daniel Marsh is actually a pseudonym given to a suspect in the case whose identity has never been made public. A suspect also referred to as David Parker by some media. In the film and in real life, he was a former Harvard student with a history of domestic abuse who moved to Michigan before copycat murders took place. However, in the film, the suspect's real name is given as Daniel Marsh, and it does not mention that another suspect was later convicted of one of the murders in the Michigan case. While the character of Paul Dempsey is fictional, some of the details about his life are based on suspected serial killer Charles E. Terry. So I just thought that was interesting to read. Because,
And again, the erroneous listing of one of their theoretical guilty parties is having...
Well, we talked about this with Big George Foreman, where, in Ali, the guy mentioned, and some other movies, The Hurricane, where if you don't know the details of the subject matter, you're just you can be taken in by the
Hang on.
drama.
Here's my gripe with that. As far as the stuff that is purely fictionalized on screen, I don't really care. Like it annoys me personally, especially. This is a craft thing with me that I'll get into in a second. When you do the like title cards at the end that are meant to say like, no, this is real.
Yeah, those need to be accurate.
And that wasn't.
Yeah, I get it. I know why that one pulled on your sack and tweaked your nipple. All right, let me address the elephant in the room because, well, Robert is very funny. He's very droll, and and I got my. But no, I mean, look, I gave you a ration of I've been giving you a ration of shit, maybe more than your fair share for the entire length and duration of our friendship, which is almost as long as my fucking marriage at this point. So, okay, I'm closer to you than anyway.
I'll be here after,
and you'll be here long after. But no, seriously, but you have taken an inordinate amount of shit from me because that's just my sense of humor. So, you clapping back because I had an emotional reaction to something very specific is within bounds, and I'm not bellyaching about it. But let me at least address what the issue is, because sometimes in our chat or on Twitter, has been historically documented on this show, I flippantly say something publicly, and there's Robert with his lawyers attacking it from all sides. I'm like, what the fuck, man? So
make a public statement, you can expect a public response.
We can talk about the temerity and the validity of this woman benignly neglecting her family to chase a story that she's passionate about to the exclusion of all else, and what the film says about that versus what in reality it amounts to. There's a conversation to be had there. Let me put that aside for a second and just deal with what is shown on film and how it affected me emotionally, how it affected me personally. Because while I sympathize with both parties, there's the husband who starts out indulging her and defending her. It's like, I support your right to be a working woman who is passionate about news, and I'm here to, while I am the man and I am the major breadwinner, I am here to support you as a journalist. And despite the fact that there are people in my own family who think you're being unreasonable and you're being, terrible to your family, I'm here to stand beside you. And she's like, that's great. I'm going to do more because I'm really passionate about this story. This is important to me. Women are being murdered and nothing is being done about it. He's like, you're right. That's terrible. Work harder. I'll do more than my share. I will pick up the slack. And then it never ends. And it just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And finally, all she's about, all that she's become, is this journalist chasing this one story. At least that's how it's presented in the film, to the point where the husband's like, do you care about us at all? And her reaction essentially is, the fact that you would even ask such a question makes you the bad guy in this scenario. And he's like, no, your actions make you the bad guy and make me question what it is we're doing here. Are we still a married couple? Are you still a mom? Do you not care about us at all? And she's like,
but women, Mark, the women.
Do you not? Well, let's not be that flip. Do you not see the greater good by me exposing this story that that is rife with police corruption and neglect of women? This story tells us about the nature of man, and the nature of man is women don't matter. This is a thing I need to talk about. And he's like, that's great. What about the rest of us? What is life without balance? And she was like, I don't need balance. I need this story to sing. And then he's just like, fuck it. Then I'm done. And he takes the kids and fucks off. And that really bothered me because, I said it that way, and I'm talking about it passionately because I can see where in any walk of life, one, partner feels neglected by the other, but the other partner feels right in what they're doing and wishes the other partner would just give infinitely, give without measure, give without asking for anything back. And when they finally break up, it hurts. It hurt me personally because I don't want to see people break up. I want to see them work this out. I wanted to see her come to her senses and realize, yes, no one's saying this isn't an important story, but you can't lose sight of everything. You can't do it to the neglect of all else. And that's what she does. And I was sad when he left, and she, and her reaction to it is like, like she doesn't cry. She doesn't go, oh, what have I done? I killed the rabbit. She's like, I'm gonna go be like, single feminist smoking bar drinking lady. And and then the film celebrates her as being like this famed journalist. Like, no. She like sacrificed her family for this. Why is
this
I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah, like,
and it's at least up for debate.
This is my gripe with that element of the movie, and I have a lot of gripes with this movie. My gripe with that element is everything she does is presented as
There's no counter,
unambiguously good.
Yeah, like I
was. Her husband. Hang on. I was listening. Comes back.
Hang on 1 second. I was listening to our review today of Jupiter's Legacy, and the reason why I cut you off is the way. There's a conversation to be had about everything I just said. There's a debate to be had. I'm not saying like everything I said is 100% like biblical and canonical, and there's no counter argument. No, there is. But what I'm saying is the film presents it as she is without fault, and her husband is the one at fault for not blindly supporting her to the exclusion. That's the word I was looking for. To the exclusion of all else. And I'm like, as opposed to Jupiter's Legacy, where there were two opposing arguments and it was just presented and it was trusted the audience to be smart enough to decide for themselves which one is right. The film makes that decision for you. That's, folks, come see Professor Mark about proper film craft and screenwriting. That's bad writing.
Yeah.
When you take a position and present it as if it's biblical fact with no counter in the movie itself, when you don't leave the audience to its own devices to decide what is right and what is wrong for themselves, you are essentially using your film to lobby your agenda. You're not doing good dramatic writing.
Yeah, that's largely my gripe with this. I mean, there's a scene where it kind of towards the middle of the movie where her husband gets a promotion.
Oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and he comes back and he says, look, I got this thing. I make more money. This is great. I've helped secure our family's future.
And she's like, what have you done for me lately?
And she just goes, you just want me to stop working. And he's just like,
And dude, it was like the Undertaker and Bret Hart. Motherfucker, it ain't always about you.
No. Like, can you just celebrate the man's success for 1 minute?
Like
before you have
quick hand job in the closet, let's go. Like, what are we doing here?
Before you have a rational discussion about what this means for the organization of your family, like, celebrate for a minute.
No, there's no time for that. She's a busy businesswoman who don't need no man.
So again, again, my gripe is the unambiguous good that she is presented as.
Right.
Like, no, this is important. I'm not saying it's not important.
Right. So I wasn't at the end of the film going, I'm with you, Keira Knightley. I think he's a bastard too. I was sad their marriage broke up and she couldn't get her shit together to figure out, like, no, your marriage was worth preserving. He's not a bad, at least the way the film presents him. He's not a bad dude.
No.
And certainly your children did nothing. Nobody in that family deserved her benign neglect. But the movie makes it like it isn't benign neglect. I'm like, but it is. And almost like if I were to have that debate out loud with somebody, like, no, I'm bad for even bringing it up. We were all supposed to celebrate Keira Knightley's stunning and braveness. And it's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm sad it ended that way. So when I put it in the group chat, when I put it in the group chat and you're just like, why did you have like such an emotional reaction? I reacted to the fact that she's such a piss poor character that and this is such bad writing. It upset me. Not that I thought it was good.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, that I think was the misunderstanding. And that's why I stopped engaging with you at that point.
Yeah, that's why. It's not that you just don't like me. I know.
Oh my God, gaslighter. You and my wife should go bowling.
Yeah, that would end badly.
Yeah, as badly as your bowling date with Kelsey. Anyway, what else about this movie?
No. Look, my bowling date with Kelsey ends the same way the bowling scene does, and there will be blood.
Moving right along.
You know it's true. So, this is another movie that's probably overlong.
This clocks in at,
I think
about 2 hours.
It's 2 and change.
Yeah, hang on. Just under 2 hours.
It feels longer. So there are some pacing issues with this movie in that respect.
Well, I was telling my wife this, like the pacing, my problem with like the pacing and the structure of the film is essentially she gets a piece of evidence, she dogs that piece of evidence, she writes, she gets yelled at, rinse, repeat for 2 hours.
Yep, that's about the size of it.
Yeah.
I think what really gets me about this movie is there are stylistic choices here that deliberately evoke infinitely better films. There's a lot of this movie that desperately wants to be David Fincher. Like, this thing evokes Seven, it evokes Zodiac, it evokes Silence of the Lambs in a few places, and you ain't Jonathan Demme either, buddy. And by inviting these comparisons, all you do is kind of invite a discerning film observer to go, well, how would this have been handled better?
Right.
So here's how this movie should have been handled. One, I don't care that you monkey with certain facts for dramatization purposes. Like that's you have to. That's fine. The timeline is the thing I would have kept. I would not have screwed with, because they do. This took place over a long number of years. And the fact that they kind of truncate that, I think, is a disservice to the story. Its longevity and the growing obsession that it fosters is part of what happens here, is part of the story. And it's given short shrift. And it's really unfortunate that it is. The desperate need to tie this up into something approximating a neat little bow bothers me. Because at the end, she knows what happened. It was these 3 guys, and they all were different killers, and they planned out Scalia.
Again, this is a very similar to Tetris.
Confession.
The themes in this, I relate more to the themes in this, and I think the themes are presented better than the actual like structure of like the structure of the film. And one of those things is this idea of you're gonna laugh, you're gonna roll your eyes and gnash your teeth, but try to control yourself, stay composed. I think the tacit acknowledgement that, especially in the world we live in now, where men and women are physically equal. No, we're not. But the insistence that we are, except that the film actually does tacitly admit, like, no, at any given time, any man can beat the living shit out of you and probably kill you. And you women live by the grace of men. And I thought it was interesting. I mean, it's presented in almost like a dark way. It's just like, hey,
it's not exactly a light fact.
I mean, yeah. Well, what I mean by that is, it's so funny because I made a joke tonight at dinner. I was
look, we are seeing at this point in time, the year of our Lord 2023, the societal fragility, and like it's coming apart at the seams, just kind of everywhere.
Couple of things. One, I made a joke tonight at dinner about this is like silverware is a tool of the matriarchy. It's meant to civilize us. Men eat with their hands. We're eating pork chops. And I said that because my son made a joke about eating with his hands, and I'm just like, do it. That's how men eat. Is it so?
Okay. I understand your joke,
but it does go to the idea of marriage and certain like social structures. These are meant to civilize men. If you look on this network, especially with us two and a few of our friends, there's very much a pro-man stance. And it's a pro-man stance in many times in reaction to the anti-man stance that has pervaded the culture and the national conversation. So here's we are in a little corner of the world, not quite being critical drinkers, but going, hey, now we're not all bad, and here's why.
Look, I can summarize what we want, like what our network would like from the media we consume. We just like it to be a little balanced.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how about fair play? So yeah. My point is, like, I am absolutely willing to go with the argument that at any given time, because of the nature of man, if we are devoid of social contract and civilization, we are deadly fucking vicious people. That's women fair. Being what they are, being the physically weaker sex, are in fucking trouble if we lose those things. But that's why they're there. Men and women getting along, building a society, progressing forward, becoming evolved, happens because of social contracting and happens because of civilizing social structures. And the film's like sort of tacit recognition that when you take those away, women are easy prey, and especially single women with none of their male protectors around are the easiest of prey. Like, it was almost, given the kind of things that are out there in the media and the national conversation right now, that's a cold, hard fact and reminder of the world that we live in the face of the fact that you have women screaming at, that, we can handle the men, we can take them. And it's like, in the movie sort of perspective is, no, you can't. Not if a man's really that fucking convinced that this is what he wants to do.
I mean,
you're in trouble.
Look, lest this come across as overly misogynistic. The reality is that's a negative for men as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because my favorite Onion article ever, and again, it's the Onion.
Mm-hmm.
So sarcasm, but there's truth here. Average man overestimates his ability to fist fight by 5,000%. And I cannot tell you, as someone who actively trains, how true that is. It's comical the degree to which the average person who can't even make a fist half the time thinks, well, if it all went down, man, y'all gonna catch these hands. Like, buddy, 5 seconds of you throwing punches and you're doubled over, gasping for breath.
My son and Chris's son, Chris's son was here for a weekend, were wrestling in the living room, and I can't tell you how many times I had to yell out fucking wrist control, defend yourself at all times, for God's sake, stand up.
Don't give up your back.
Yeah, really. Just like the things you think you know about fighting that you find out you don't real fast. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge all of that with Boston Strangler. Yeah. That while the movie itself has craft flaws, thematically, I actually think it's kind of brave and interesting. And those were the things that were when I put my thoughts in the group chat, it was mostly about, I thought it dealt well with some very interesting themes that were appealing to me, and in some cases were quite startling given the nature and breadth of most media in 2023. That doesn't mean the film is made well. It just means it's got some heady subjects that I thought it handled pretty well.
Here's my I came away from this movie, again, deeply unimpressed.
Mm-hmm.
But desperately wishing a better director had had this.
Yeah, I think Boston Strangler in its current form needs a new director and another pass through editing.
Again, all the violence and all the murders are handled in the most like toothless fashion. I don't mean I need to watch someone die.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you present a very sanitized.
Well, I was going to think you brought up like David Fincher, and I was thinking that first shot of the victim with with the broom up her ass or whatever it was, and it was like they could have gone like full 7 and they chose not to.
Yeah, again, and it doesn't need to be unduly graphic. And if you look at something like the first Saw movie, or again, Silence of the Lambs,
or again, Seven,
Zodiac, which is the other one that I think is in the same vein. They're actually very subdued when you look at the nature of the violence they depict.
Or go the other direction. If you want to focus on feminism and the dogged pursuit of justice, then make that your movie and don't focus on the murders so much. I think the film is a little unfocused because it doesn't really know what it wants to be. I think it's kind of like with Tetris, where we have this really heady story about this really fun, interesting business thing that happened at the end of the Cold War. Okay, but are there car chases? No. Well, get them in there because it's the year of our Lord 2023 and people want car chases. And you have this movie. Like, I want to tell the story about this woman's like pursuit of justice in the face of all else to the exclusion of her family. Yes, but do you show any graphic rapes and murders? No. We'll put them in there because that's what sells. Sex sells. Like,
well, here's the other bits of stuff that are the discussion about police competence is badly handled. I'm actually all for like the discussion about how this was handled by the relevant law enforcement authorities, because it's worth discussing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth having Keira Knightley screaming at the top of her lungs in the middle of the street, the Boston PD sucks.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to pass by, in a postal truck yelling "Black Lives Matter."
It really does feel like that. It's
Mhm.
again, you want to discuss how badly they handled it. I'm all for it. I
Right.
really am, because again, this
That's
was
the thing,
not
like,
handled well.
there's a real life story of how this was poorly handled.
Yeah.
You don't have to push your anti-cop agenda in this movie. It was already there. Just present the facts as they are.
And so that's a bit of a problem.
Mm.
But and the times when it just does focus on some of the facts related to how badly this stuff worked, it works. Like when the New York detective calls and goes, "Yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with the various police agencies, but I can't get through. Nobody wants to talk to me. I don't really have much recourse because the FBI at this point in time is not the FBI that we know and love today." Put love in serious air quotes there. And like when you see some of the bureaucratic and like quasi-political nonsense that goes on, it's frustrating, and that it is supposed to be.
Right.
But you exaggerate it and then you ignore it for long periods of time. Again, presenting everything Keira Knightley's character does as a moral good is a giant problem for me with the structure of this.
Mhm.
Then we get to the need to wrap this up with a bow.
Yeah.
The better version of this movie is she never finds out we still don't actually know. Like this is not quite like the Zodiac, which is famously unsolved, or Jack the Ripper. But
we should have had a Spartacus ending. I'm the Boston Strangler. I'm the Boston Strangler. It's just showing various men.
yeah, like and it's just her nightmares, like every man that she's ever come across.
Oh my god, that would have been a much better ending. She's like standing in the streets of Boston, like right in the middle of like Boston Commons, and just every man just looks at her with hungry eyes. It's like, I'm the Boston Strangler.
And it happens all at once, like the Matrix scene. Everything stops and all the heads turn.
Right. Oh my god, that would have been so much better.
But again, like that's kind of what this needed. This needed the ambiguity. This needed to be unsolved largely, and it's still largely it's at this point in time kind of assumed that the guy who confessed maybe raped one of the women, but wasn't really the guy who killed a bunch of there's a lot of discussion about which of these murders are actually connected. And again, the movie gets away with this there's that one guy who effed off in the middle, and then there's these other three guys, and we're going to blame them. And the ambiguity is necessary because it feeds the obsession of your main character. And the fact that she never actually gets a concrete answer is kind of how this needed to end. This needed to end with her obsession not paying off.
Right.
And her having to kind of move on.
Instead, she's just like, she drives to her home and she's like, ugh, I don't want to go in there with my shitty husband and my shitty kids. I want to go to the bar and drink with my cohort. Ew. like that's your story. Like, I think a better ending for this story, but of course then she can't be stunning and brave, is she's done with the story now. It's over. And she's like, okay, I'm here to be the wife and mother to my family, and they're gone already. Yeah. And she's like, I lost everything. I don't have my story. I don't have my story. We don't definitively know who the Boston Strangler is. My family is gone. I am Captain Ahab, and I have died hunting this whale. Yeah. And instead, and like that, I think is the tragedy of this story is, any man could be a Boston Strangler, and this woman lost everything in pursuit of that terrible truth. That's a strong ending. Yeah. Instead, what we get is, I would rather be anything but home with my family. I want to be out painting the town red, chasing this fucking story. And then it's like, then she wonders why they left at the end. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
That is an angry woman who wrote that ending.
Here's the other thing that annoys me about this.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the tagline and part of the selling for this is, oh, watch these women overcome rampant sexism inherent to 1960s America. And the extent to which they face sexism is being called skirts a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no if that's what you think sexism looks like.
Well, the other hilarious thing is your the character that you're supposed to follow, you're supposed to feel sympathy for as being the object of sexism, in the same fucking scene that there's a woman doing hardcore investigative reporting. Like, no, ma'am, it's not that we're mistreating women, it's that you didn't get the gig you wanted. There's a woman right there doing that job. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I again, I'm not saying you can't tell a story about women overcoming sexism in the workplace, by all means. But if that's going to be part of your selling point, it needs to actually exist.
Yeah, they needed to not have that character be introduced the way that they were. Because if your story is, oh, put upon Keira Knightley, she's not allowed, she has to review toasters because, you know, women are mistreated, when she could be out there being the most talented Ray Palpatine reporter there could be in the office.
Like, again, like if you want to
they needed to have given her that opportunity and then bring the partner in, not have the partner already doing the job, therefore negating your point.
Yeah. Or like, again, she's stuck doing, reviewing toasters while an incompetent drunk has the job that she feels qualified for because, well, he's a man and you're a woman and women review toasters. And none of that's present. Absolutely none of it.
Well, you have the one guy, you have the Judge Phelan from The Wire, who's just like, oh, that story has no legs. How do we know that? How do we know he's not telling the truth? Like, the movie's perspective is Kira's in the right because she has a vagina, and all the guys are in the wrong because they have penises. And there's like no, they don't show you that the male reporters are fucking up. They show you the cops are fucking up, but the perspective of the movie is the cops are fuck ups. The perspective of the movie vis-a-vis the journalists are, isn't it unfair to women that they have to review toasters? Not that the male journalists aren't doing their job. So when he's just like, there's no legs to this story, boss. Like this, they've already checked this out. There's nothing to it. We have no idea as the audience member if he's true, but the film wants you to disagree with him and see him as bad because he has a giant dangling penis. And it's like, no, that's not how this works.
Not just that, but any obstacle presented to Keira Knightley is presented as just, again, kind of an abject evil.
Right.
And in reality, if you look at a few of the times when her like editor goes, this is bad work.
Do better.
We can't print this now. You don't actually have anything. And she storms off like, no, he's right.
Ma'am, the fiction's down the hall. This is a newspaper.
Yeah. And then when she has a better story, he runs it.
Right.
That's what his job is.
Yeah.
It's presented
the people who wrote this, I mean, it's credited as Matt Ruskin, but there had to be more writers on this.
One would assume, unless this guy's just the worst.
Is that they don't really know how. I know I get shit because all I do is ever quote The Wire, but the fact that you had David Simon and Ed Burns, who one of the two of them worked at the Baltimore Sun and took great pains in season 5 to show you how a newspaper runs. There's not that kind of thing in this movie.
Yeah.
This movie has imagines. This movie saw The Wire season 5 and then imagined what a newsroom was like and was like, this is how news works. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. Anything else about Boston Strangler before we move on? Because we're getting close to when we need to start moving things on.
It's not a good movie. Here's the best thing I can say about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Keira Knightley's acting is really good. Like, she gives a very good performance.
So is her hair and makeup. She actually gets done up very well in this movie. Look, period pieces.
Production. No, I'm going to go with you here. Mm-hmm. Production-wise, they do a really good job of making this feel like the appropriate time period. So hats off to that one. Seriously.
Right. Period pieces where hair and makeup and costuming are appropriate and accurate and you feel like you're there should be called out for being positive because I think it's often, just like when we talked about sound design with Evil Dead Rise, we often neglect to talk about the other elements of film craft that make things a film. Like your performance, your line readings, everything may be great, but if everyone's costume looks like it came out of, some stripper's closet, it takes away from the movie. If your hair and makeup look like kabuki theater, you're also going to have some problems. So I wanted to call out hair, makeup, set design for
costuming,
cinematography. I think also, I think. Well,
here's my problem.
We talked about some things have lack of grit. This has plenty of grit.
Here, here's
Grit
my
in terms of like someone put a gritty film over the fucking camera, Robert.
yeah. Again, here's my problem with that.
Mhm.
Again, I'll be brief here.
Mm-hmm.
This is doing a bad David Fincher impression visually. Like
Okay.
you threw the Fincher filter on it
Mm-hmm.
and didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know
Yeah.
when to use it, when to take it away, or what it's supposed to do.
Right. You just kind of went, well, David Fincher films are all gray, so we're going to make this one gray too. And it's Boston, so it works.
And again, it's not that I don't appreciate the attempt to make this feel that way. But again, all you're doing is inviting direct comparisons to much better movies to the detriment of everything about yours.
All right. With that said, once again, the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
And once again, we are mid. Though I'm really surprised the audience score was a little bit higher than the tomato meter.
Well, one, we're only dealing with 250 or so reviews.
Yeah.
So that tracks. like look, again, when your audience review total is like barely 2x the number of professional reviews, that's a problem.
All right.
That's going to skew things a little bit.
Critical consentence written by Rotten Tomatoes Chat GPT. Boston Strangler is nowhere near as gripping as it should be, but the worthy story and strong cast are often adequate compensation. Terrific.
I might actually give this a fail on a pass-fail. Like half, it's close.
Fletcher Powell of KMUW Wichita Public Radio. This has to be one of the worst looking movies I can remember.
Well, I assume you've been struck in the head several times and your memory is not that good. There are worse looking movies than this.
Friend of the show, William Bibiani, critically acclaimed podcast. At home, you can kind of appreciate that, hey, this knockoff Zodiac has some good talent on it.
Here's my problem with it. It doesn't. Again, like you've got Knightley and then you've got some people behind the scenes that put in good work, but there was not a lot of talent in this movie.
Yeah. Keira Knightley's kind of holding the whole thing up. Uncle Robert Winfree, Roger Moore of Movie Nation. As which she said, that was the movie I was thinking of. I was talking to Melissa on one of our outings lately, and I was comparing Boston Strangler to She Said in terms of like this is yet another Me Too movie. And I couldn't remember the name of the movie, and I'm just like and I'm thinking of like I'm trying to go through all these titles in my head, and I'm like she said that's what it was. As with She Said, the shoe leather reporting, threatening phone calls, and genuine peril at the idea of one of these women will be alone with someone who might be a dangerous criminal feels authentic.
Okay, hang on. Let me stop you right there. One, She Said has no peril to it.
No, not at all.
Second,
have you actually watched She Said?
No, I don't need to.
Well, no, but you're not wrong. There's nothing like that in She Said.
Yeah, again, none of that. Two, the threatening phone calls, put serious air quotes around those. It's two guys, like there's two instances of it where someone breathes heavily on the other end. There's no actual threat. There's no actual menace. Keira Knightley at no point in this movie actually feels like she's in danger. That's a wild misread of everything about that.
Ready, steady, cut, staff. Ready, steady, cut. Though Boston Strangler isn't as gripping as other real-life stories based on serial killers, it's worth the watch if you're an avid true crime fan.
No,
if you're a white woman, you'll probably enjoy this movie.
If you're an avid true crime fan, this will annoy you because it messes way too much with the facts. If you like serial killer fan fiction, maybe you'll go with this.
Randy Myers of the San Jose Mercury News, who broke the CIA gave the black people crack story back in the day.
Really?
Top critic. Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
It was the San Jose Mercury News that ran the series
hang on, no,
that exposed this. Go ahead.
Was it this guy in particular, or was it just the?
It was like a million years ago, bro. Like it wasn't fucking Randy Myers.
Okay, then don't say him.
I said the San Jose Mercury News is what fucking,
okay.
is what did it. Top critic. The matchup of Keira Knightley and Carrie Coon punches up this involving period-rich but somewhat ordinary thriller that celebrates old-school journalism. No, it doesn't.
It really doesn't. And second of all, this is my other gripe about this movie. Like, Carrie Coon is utterly buried. Like, she exists, but...
Well, she's kind of like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this movie. And I mean, like, Sir Alec Guinness Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Not poor Ewan McGregor.
No. I got you. I got you there. Like, no, she is given horribly short shrift.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame.
The future ex-Mrs. Robert Winfree once again making a second appearance on our show of the curvy film critic. Can I officiate your wedding when you have it to Carlo Renata? I want to officiate your wedding. I'll get like the thing that day.
You can officiate the funeral.
Perfect. I'll take either. Carrie Coon and Keira Knightley are equally yoked in strength. Ugh.
No.
Vulnerability and tenacity explored through two women fighting it out and standing their ground amongst a male chauvinistic world of journalism. Moves a little slow, but well worth the ride. Oh, Carla, this was too much movie for you.
I'm shocked the sum total of your review wasn't just yes, queen.
YAS, Yas queen.
Whatever.
All right, we'll do one more. Johnny Loftus of Decider. He decides for us. Don't you understand, Robert Winfree of the Screaming?
I am the decider.
He is the decider. Keira Knightley leads a strong cast in Boston Strangler, who all lend real watchability to this true crime tale, even as its pendulous air and brooding soundtrack begin to get a little suffocating.
No, this movie's a chore. I was bored by it. Okay, and I mean this in all sincerity, Mark. Like, this movie affected you more than me. I saw our friend down there. Get back to him in a second. But, like, the minute-to-minute watching of this movie is a chore.
Yeah, I was like watching it in bed next to my wife while she snored in my ear. Don't get me wrong. Hang on. All right, this is the last one. Kevin Carr, fat guy at the movies, our friend, is back. He didn't like it. While a compelling look at the case and journalistic process, the deliberately dark presentation and murky approach leaves a lot to be desired. Aw, this wasn't brightly colored enough for you, Kevin. No, none of jingling keys.
He doesn't. Again, this represents a misunderstanding about the deliberate choices behind your aesthetic that they're supposed to evoke specific things. Moreover, if you consider what happened here to be a scintillating look at real-world journalism, I got some bad news for you.
I got some bad news for you. All right.
Why did you remind me he's on comment? I don't like Barrett. He's the color guy for SmackDown now, and I miss Pat McAfee.
All right, real quick, I just to say we do have a little bit of time if we don't go long on plug. So Here we go, folks. Closing out our double feature Damn You Hollywood segment for the evening. The much ballyhooed Money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
All right, in the year of our Lord, though, obviously there was no money for either one of these turkeys, but just to kind of let people know what we're doing here, Guardians of the Galaxy was the #1 weekend, second week in a row.
Hang on, you have to eat crow.
I know, no, I was gonna do it. Lee, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but look, it happens so rarely. If I don't have to remind, I feel it behooves me to grab the crow by the neck and then like hold you open, and then just kind of shove.
Look, I'm not here to kink shame, and if that's what you're into, that's fine. I'll do it with you.
That is absolutely not what I'm into.
But you're weird, man. Yeah, I said it was going to be a 70% drop because I had no fucking faith in the movie going public. But this, I guess good word of mouth, solid franchise base, dedicated fan base, less than a 50% drop second week.
Well, hang on, that's slightly inaccurate. It dropped around 50%, which in today's world, like, that's good.
Yeah.
The flip side is Guardians actually opened soft.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll recall, we talked about it. It had a less than 120 million opening. It was in that ballpark. It was like 116, right. I think.
I think that's what I say. I think that second week was the people who were like, been burned by Marvel one too many times. Let me wait and see how it goes the first week.
Part of the reason this had a good second week is I think there was some hesitance around it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people
wasn't a piece of shit and then went to second week.
So, not bad. I expect it'll see a slightly steeper drop this week.
All right. Maintaining its spot in number 2 was Super Mario Brothers, which I think got its POV date.
Billion.
And now we'll get there. Book Club debuted at number 3. Evil Dead Rise dropped from 3 to 4. Are you there, Margaret? It's me, Tampon. Dropped from 4 to 5. Hypnotic, Not a Drink debuted at number 6. John Wick 6 to 7. Love Again 5 to 8. Air 8 to 9. Dungeons and Dragons currently on Paramount Plus 7 to 10.
Oof.
The Covenant bombing fast at 9 to 11. Knights of the Zodiac debuted at 12. Sisu dropped out of the top 10 to 13. Blackberry, which I actually saw today, really good. If you have an opportunity to go see it in theater, or or wait for it to come on streaming in a week, definitely check it out. If you're into like Air, Tetris, the Wizard of whatever the fuck it is on HBO that talked about Bernie Madoff. Oh god, what was it? Oh, the Big Short, movies like that, which I happen to like a lot. I think you'll enjoy Blackberry. Jay Baruchel does a really good job with it. Fool's Paradise debuted at number 15. Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Speaking of bombs.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Let me say it before we get.
We do not have a 20 minutes to do anything about Marvel this week.
I'll wait for the worldwide thing to talk briefly about Ant-Man, and because it relates to Guardians, so it'll wait.
Ant-Man dropped from 12 to 16, Nefarious 15 to 17, The Pope's Exorcist 13 to 18, and Big George Foreman 11 to 19. Roll With It debuted at number 20, and It Ain't Over Till It's Over, baby. Debuted at number 23. Monica debuted at number 31. The Stalling Girl 33. Lemoncita 38. And that was the weekend that was. Worldwide, Super Mario is number 1 with over 1 billion. Guardians in the second spot at 542 million. Ant-Man holding at 475.
Briefly about Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people doing the, Marvel's track record recently is one bombs, one does well, and then we just oscillate that back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's not accurate. Here's the problem with some of this stuff. So, one, Ant-Man and the Wasp cost $250 million in just production.
Mm-hmm.
Failed to hit 500 million, lost. That's not even including advertising. Guardians was a $220 million movie, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Probably 250 because all these things run over budget. And that's not a knock on Marvel. That's literally all movies. So call it 250. Not including advertising. So at the moment, we're probably it probably needs a 700 million minimum to break even. To actually start turning
profit. Look, that's going to get there. I mean, it's got to, we'll get to this in a second, but it's got to debut with like Fast X and The Little Mermaid over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's my problem with Guardians. Mm-hmm. Look, Fast X is going to win this weekend. Right?
Sure.
Little Mermaid is going to win its weekend and then drop off a cliff.
Yeah, it's tracking to do well opening weekend, but then everyone that sees it opening weekend is all the movie that money makes.
Again, here's the problem with Little Mermaid. Mm-hmm. And anyone saying it's going to have a poor opening is being disingenuous. Don't care who you are. Right. That's a disingenuous take. It's 65 to 70% drop the second week. That's the story.
All right, John Wick at number 4, Creed 3, D&D 6, Scream 7, Shazam 8, Evil Dead Rise at 1.
You know what?
And
Evil Dead's going to do better than Shazam, and I'm so happy.
And Pathan at 128 million. Here are all the movies currently doing worse than Titanic, which dropped to 16, which makes this joke a little less funny now. But
yeah, it's
65 because Adam Driver.
No. It's still funny because look, we took that when Morbius was in the 20s.
True. 65 because Adam Driver, you fucking assholes at Marvel, is not a action star. God damn you. Tragic Mike's Last Dance, Demon Slayer, Knock at the Cabin, Mummies, Jesus Revolution, Plane, Missing, Asterix Noblix, 80 for Brady, Operation Fortune, Ride On, Alibi.com 2, and Beat His Sky Utopia. All right, I'm done with this. All right, so that is our reviews of Boston Strangler and Tetris on Damn You Hollywood. Next week at our usual Bat Time and Bat Channel, will be Fast X, and then after that's The Little Mermaid.
You might have to talk me off the ledge.
Yes.
When it comes to Fast X. I'm just warning you, man. Like I have seen the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I think it's in Brie Larson's contract at this point that she just has to be insufferable.
Okay. Let me get through this. I got people waiting on me here.
Yeah.
Spider-Man Across the Universe Part 1. And then we got Transformers and Elemental and Flash. So we've got Damn You Hollywood in its usual Tuesday at 9 o'clock spot all the way through June. As for what we're doing this week, Jason and I, The Protocol Son, we reviewed You Season 4. Last night, John Brodigan, the Freak Boy, re-entered the fray. He came back home to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, and he joined Alexis Hana and Zach the Lego Maniac with only one prop tonight that he was banging against pots and pans. And we looked at the Muppets Mayhem. Tomorrow, Pat and I review the Barrera versus Morales trilogy. On Friday, the Good Boys over at Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do review Peter Pan and Wendy and Beau is Afraid. It's Everyone Loves a Bad Guy Saturdays and Metal Hammer of Doom Sundays this weekend. We look at the villains of the wrestling territories on Saturday. And on Sunday, Ailstorm, Sunset on the Golden Age. Next week,
Ailstorm.
Next week, we're heading to the Treme where people sashay past my porch and across my lawn. We're looking at Treme Season 2 on the corner, from the corner to the deuce. Fast X, as I mentioned before. And then Evan Bevins, who walks with Jesus, some language, will be doing a comic strip with me. We're going to be looking at the movie and the book, Cowboys and Aliens.
Oof.
That's all for me. Thanks. I'm driving. All right, Robert Winfree, show us where you pissed from.
No. So, I covered Monday Night Raw a couple of days ago. I will be covering it this upcoming week.
By the way, you have 4 minutes.
The vaunted Tony Acero is taking a vacation. I, who get no vacation, was then beaten about the head and shoulders and then sent out there to cover that. So I'll be doing it again this coming Monday, and then he'll be back to take the weight of the world because, boy, 3 hours is too much for that show. I will be covering WWE SmackDown as well this coming Friday because that's what I do weekly. A lot of other stuff up in the air as AEW is restructuring some of their shows, so who knows? We'll see. I probably won't be covering Collision because it's Saturday and the UFC events are Saturday, and I'd rather watch that. Speaking of the UFC, this Saturday is UFC on ESPN Plus 81. It's not a good card, but I'll be covering it in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. If you want a full preview as well as a review of last week's UFC on ABC4, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA radio show, MMA podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find me over there. Previews, reviews, breakdowns, news of the week, all that fun stuff. You can find me over there talking about the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. And we'll be back next week for Fast X, where I desperately try not to unalive myself, as the kids say. No need to get us dinged for my language, even though I'm an adult and can understand the joke. That's you, me, and who else is on that, Alexis?
Which one, Fast X?
Yeah, who else is on that? It's you and me, and who else?
Oh, I don't know. I actually don't have anyone else listed, so it might just
is
be
that
me and
literally just you and me suffering through that?
Yeah, well, it was the same one with
Okay.
Fast and the Furious 9, which took us two and three tries to do, if you'll remember.
Oh,
I don't think anyone wants to do these Fast and the Furious movies anymore.
They're stupid. They're unbearably stupid. Dude, the funniest thing in the world was that, I'll be very brief.
Mm-hmm.
Someone put up a tweet that went viral asking, when was the exact moment the Fast and the Furious franchise abandoned reality?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of people with stuff from the later movies, which of course have abandoned reality. And then there's those of us that know. Those of us that remember. Those of us that have seen Too Fast, Too Furious.
Okay.
And we know this franchise abandoned reality 5 minutes into the sequel when James Remar has a giant, basically Nerf gun and shoots an electric device into the frame of Paul Walker's car, which short circuits everything in it and brings his escape to a halt. We know this franchise has never, ever been about reality, not even in the first one, which was as close to it as they got.
And with that said, folks, thank you for joining us here on Damn You Hollywood. For Robert Winfree, I'm Social. Be well, be safe, and behave.